All right. Where are we going? Fort Nelson. Let's take... I do kind of want to take the DC. Let's take the Islander. Yeah. That should all be on live. We'll go Charlie Yankee Yankee Echo. Should probably push my seat back a bit. All right. Load all of our stuff. For some reason, the audio is not coming through. Where is it? All right. Over to Peace River, Alberta. Here we are in the lovely Fort Nelson, British Columbia. It's not lovely. I lived here for too long. So from where we were sitting, I do believe town is that way. I could be wrong though, I'm not quite sure. We're facing north right now. So yeah, town should actually be that way. Over there. But let's see if we can get this thing started, because it's cold out. Now it has been a minute since I've flown this thing. So it may take me a minute to remember where everything is. I remember right, those are the back doors. Yeah, cargo door is a back door. Alright. Oh, prop full. That's that all set. Trim is zeroed. Oh. Left side fuel pump. Oh, no, I want port mags on. Fuel is already on. Fuel valves are open. Clear prop. Passenger is in. Closed doors. Let's get some of that anti-ice going. There's this pitot heat, airframe de-ice, prop de-ice, windscreen. So as you can see, we're icing up pretty quick. We got that on. Actually, I'll get number 2 fired here. Bring up the avionics. Alright, that's the avionics calibrated. We want trying to think of what's closest here. Two six. The fuck?
Charlie Yankee Yankee Echo Traffic Gearhead Gaming 420 is taxiing to runway 26.
We'll go direct to. I'm actually gonna bring the idle up on these engines. Cylinder temp's still way down. So let's bring this up to 1200. It's 1000. It's 11. Oh no, that was 12. That's about 11. We want Charlie Yankee Papa Echo. There we go. Alright, windshields de-icing, cylinder temps are coming up. Let's taxi out. Excuse me. What are we, minus 15 here? So not too horribly cold, but pretty chilly. One thing I didn't do, which I'm glad I just caught. It'd be cool if they would, instead of just having a snow texture on the ground, it'd be cool if they could have like a snow-swept taxiway, like, if that makes sense. No, give me the cabin lights, damn it. Alright, cylinder temps are up, T's and P's are good. Look at this guy trying to drag race me. Good old Fort Nelson.
Charlie Yankee Yankee Echo Traffic Gearhead Gaming 420 taking off runway 26 East departure.
Alright, we'll bring you down. We'll bring on the landing lights. good. Holy shit, we're icing up bad already and we're not even off the ground yet. I do have all my anti-ice on, right? Do one last check here. The strobe light's on. Ooh, look at that. Starboard gen wasn't on. We're on battery power. Windscreen ice is on. Airframe is on. Cabin lights are off and set for takeoff. Flaps 5. Fuel is good. Amps are good. Volts are, what, 28? Flaps are set to take off. Let's do it. Port Nelson seaplane base? What the fuck? Ooh, we are heavy. I bring that trim back a bit. Well, there's positive rate, so I'll go gear up, or flaps up. Start picking up some speed. Let me trim this thing out here. There we go. We're on the trim wheel. It's a little too much. I feel like my camera is set way too high. Let me fix that quick. Is that under general? Yeah, it is. Camera height. Try 70. I don't mind the actually, let's just try it off. Alright, so see if we can get our GPS to line up here. There we go. Beauty. I caught the GPS and everything first try. Ooh, oil pressure's looking a little high. Close enough. There we go. Looking a little better there. That's cool. Watch the sun come up through that. Ooh, it's getting cold in here. That's ice. Building up on the edges. Oh, I totally choked on that. Oh, Excuse me. Okay, so what have we got? Oh, it's one thing I wanted to do. Okay, hold on.
Let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so here we are on the flight deck of the PMDG Douglas DC-6. If you're used to flying jets,
I'm actually going to keep this
like
over
probably comes as a
here.
bit of a shock to you. A whole lot of round dials, buttons, switches, and knobs, and that sort of thing. The point of this episode is to help get you oriented, show you that there's really actually a little bit of methodology to how things are laid out. Once you understand that methodology, you'll be able to find the information that you need pretty quickly. For the most part, the controls and indicators in the cockpit of a DC-6 are clustered together by function. The exception to this rule, of course, being the dimmer knobs and the lighting controls. Those are sort of scattered haphazardly around the flight deck, so we're going to do a whole tutorial session just on cockpit lighting. So the goal in this tutorial is to really help you get oriented and understand where to look when you need information or what controls control what. There's a lot of dials in this airplane, and really just don't be intimidated by that. We're going to walk you through this. All this will start to make sense before you even get around to starting the airplane.
Why isn't it
Once
showing?
you've worked with it a little bit, the layout will actually make a whole lot of sense to you. So we're going to work our way across the flight deck from left to right, and then we'll go across the top of the overhead panel. Over here on the left side of the flight deck, we've got a tablet. This tablet
Oh, I
is
might have
something
to
that we
be
installed
watching
here
it.
in order to give you a way to control some of the interface between you and the simulator, which is fuel and maintenance and that sort of thing. Here on the left side of the panel is the captain's primary flight instruments. In the center, we've got all the engine instrumentation. On the right side of the cockpit, we've got the co-pilot's flight instruments. Down here across the very front of the throttle pedestal, you've got all your engine and fuel controls. You've got two sets of throttles on each side. All your propeller controls are located right here in the middle, and then you've got fuel controls sort of tucked in the front here. We'll get a better look at those a little bit later. As we look down, you'll notice a spot here on the left that's not textured. Just ignore that. The product's still in development at this stage. But this is a view of your pedestal. We've got your gust lock here for your flight controls so they don't get damaged blowing around in the wind. You've got the mixture controls that control the fuel to your engines. You've got landing gear, carburetor heat, flaps, some hydraulic controls, and then there's another one tucked here underneath the co-pilot seat. Underneath this red thing on the floor is your fuel dump. This white wheel here is your aileron trim. Up here we have the gyro pilot. Occasionally you'll hear me, others refer to this as an autopilot. It is not. This is a gyro pilot. It does many of the similar functions, altitude, heading, hold, that sort of thing, but it's a gyro pilot. Over here on the left side of the pedestal, you've got a little red knob there you can see. That's your parking brake. You're going to want to use that during engine run-ups for sure. On the sides of the pedestals here, you can see we've got trim knobs, wheels really. As we look up to the overhead panel, speaking of trim wheels, folks often wonder what this is right here. That's your rudder trim. And you're going to get to use this quite a bit as we get into engine failure scenarios, so I'm looking forward to that. Moving up over here to the left eyebrow panel, we've got your test functions for all your fire detection and suppression. Those are sort of clustered together right over here. Along the top of the combing panel here, you've got all your fire indicators. Those will light up with a pleasing sounding bell if you've got bad problems.
If you've got bad
A couple
problems.
of light dimmers, some temperature control knobs for your anti-icing, and you'll notice that this spot right here, a couple of dimmer knobs, they're just sort of jammed into open real estate, and that's what I was talking about earlier about the dimmers being sort of scattered about. Moving on, we've got the left eyebrow panel here. This is your anti-ice controls, and all of these switches along the bottoms, this is the ways you protect the airplane from accumulating ice. It's all done through gas heaters. These indicators right here help you diagnose that your heaters are functioning and that they're performing well. You've also got your pitot heat right here. These small dials here, these are your fluid quantity indicators, things like oil and hydraulic fluid and your anti-detonation fluids that the engines consume at high power. A little bit lower, the big dials, these are your fuel tanks. The top row are your main tanks, the bottom row is your auxiliary tanks. Got light switches, got your cowl flap switches here for engine cooling management. Over here you've got your supercharger switches and a row of radios across the bottom to sort of make up the rest of the stack. And on the topic of radios, let's take a look back down here at the pedestal. You'll notice I skipped over this area here.
Man, this is a lot for this
These are
thing.
the original radios from when the airplane was put in service in 1952. The technology is very outdated. They've been deprecated, but they've been left in there because it's a lot of work to take them out. So we modeled them as still being there, even though they're not functional. These are the radios that you'll use during the course of flight. Continuing on now, the upper right eyebrow panel. This is your pressurization and cabin temperature controls right here. You can keep things nice and cool or warm and toasty depending on what your preferences are. A little bit further on the right here, this is your electrical system diagnostic panel. And we'll dive into that a little bit as we get into discussing some of the advanced systems. Moving to the overhead
Want me
panel
blinded?
now, these are your feathers controls for engines 1 and 2. On this
I love
side
how the
here,
glare shields
engines 3
actually
and 4,
work.
your feathering controls over here. These are your ignition switches, your starter switches, electrical generators, emergency power. These are your AC inverters for the equipment that needs AC power. These are your fuel switches, both main and auxiliary. Again, a bunch of dimmer knobs, more light switches. Up here we've got water injection pumps for operating the engines at high power. Those are a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to showing you how those work. Over here on this side we have oil dilution. You'll use those in cold environments. You have a bunch of circuit breakers for the fuel pumps. These switches right up here, they control the spark inside the magnetos. Up here we've got controls for the prop anti-ice system and some test equipment here to make sure that it's all functioning properly. Over here on this side we've got a placard here. This is actually a pretty handy little tool so that you don't have to go digging through the manuals to figure out what your takeoff and landing speeds are. You just simply glance up here at this
this placard, and that'll give you all the information you need. We'll show you how that works when we get into the flying part of the tutorials. Now back here, this part of the cockpit's not finished. It's still under work, so ignore all the light leaks and that sort of stuff. But what we're looking at here are circuit breaker panels. All the circuit breakers function. We've modeled all of them on the airplane. Pretty straightforward to use, and basically on is up and down is open. So if you come along and you see one of these breakers is in a down position like this, it would mean that that breaker has popped, and depending on what your checklist tells you, you might come back and reset it once, usually only once. If it continues to pop, that's an indication of a problem. This little placard over here, zoom in on, will help you locate circuit breakers if you're not sure exactly where they are. You just glance at that placard, it'll tell you where to look. So that's pretty much it. Congratulations, you've completed your work. Well, hello and welcome aboard, everybody. It's Rob from PMDG. Episode 2 of our DC6 tutorial series for Microsoft Flight Simulator. The subject of today's tutorial, we're going to be talking about the view controls within the simulator. We've shipped the product with a number of pre-configured views for you. We put these together based on what we know of how you will move around the cockpit when operating the airplane. So I'm going to show you how that all works. I'm also going to show you how to customize it a little bit. If you're like me, you probably have specific preferences to how you like to control your views, so we'll give you a little bit of insight on how that works as well. So we start off by going to the view controls. And you're going to notice that I have a custom keyboard profile that I set up for my own use when I'm flying. It's right up here. I also have another keyboard profile for when I'm working on development, but I've also saved the default profile just in case I need to go back to it for some reason. Now, I strongly recommend you come down here and press this expand collapse button just to compress this whole menu down. It cleans it up, it makes it easier to find what you're looking for. For example, we want to go in here into the camera controls and take a look at the mode switches. Use this as an example. On the left column here, these are the default keys. And the right column, if you've bound a key to a control, you'll see it over here. Now, there's a million reasons why you might want to bind a key to a specific function. In my case, I do it primarily because I'm lazy. You'll see back in my profile here, we've got the default Microsoft ones. And then on the right, we've got ones that I've chosen. You'll notice I'm using the S key, and I did that because that's the key we've used going back 16 generations of Flight Simulator to change the view. So rather than having to learn something new, I just bound in there what I'm used to. And that'll come in handy if you wish to set up controls like I've done here. You know, it's always handy to be able to move the viewpoint around inside the cockpit. So I've gone and set up the ability to translate the cockpit view around up and down, left and right. And I did that just by assigning things here. And you'll want to do that and find a way that makes sense to you for your flying and usage style. Now, in the DC6, when we shipped the product to you, we included a number of pre-configured cockpit views, and we set these views up specifically to enhance the workflow throughout the flight deck. A DC6 is usually a 2 or 3 man crew airplane depending on the operator. You're going to have the joy of operating it by yourself, so you need to really leverage the view system to maximize your advantages, and we've done that for you. I'm going to show you how that works now, and I'm also going to show you how I set it up on my computer to match my needs. I'm left-handed, so I tend to like the view controls to be under my right hand, and that tends to mean putting them on the numpad, so that's the example that we're going to use. You can set it up any way you'd like. You might want to set it up under certain keys or along a certain by pressing pull. Welcome back, everybody. It's Rob from PMDG. Welcome to a moment to hear this tablet in charge. We've done a few things. All right, so welcome to cover. So, flying the airplane, delegate things, and accomplishing complex going to become one of your best friends as you...
Well, hello to how you like to control. In my case, I do it primarily because I'm lazy. You'll see back in my profile here, we've got the default Microsoft ones, and then on the right, we've got ones that I've chosen. You'll notice I'm using the S key, and I did that because that's the key we've used going back like 16 generations of Flight Simulator to change the view. So rather than having to learn something new, I just bound in there what I'm used to.
And that'll come in handy if you wish to set up controls like I've done here. It's always handy to be able to move the viewpoint around inside the cockpit. So I've gone and set up the ability to translate the cockpit view around up and down, left and right. And I did that just by assigning things here. And you'll want to do that and find a way that makes sense to you for your flying and usage style. Now, in the DC-6, when we shipped the product to you, we included a number of pre-configured cockpit views, and we set these views up specifically to enhance the workflow throughout the flight deck. A DC-6 is usually a 2 or 3 man crew airplane depending on the operator. You're going to have the joy of operating it by yourself, so you need to really leverage the view system to maximize your advantages. And so I tend to like the view controls to be under my right hand, and that profile, a little hidden, pulling up mic, is significant.
Configured the sim to allow you to move the head around. Let me show you how you do that, because it's important to flying. Not all
Apply and save so that you can save your key bindings.
Now, one more item that's important to your setup. If you have not already configured the sim to allow you to move the head around, let me show you how you do that, because it's important to flying the DC-6. So I've pulled up my keyboard profile here, up, down, my keyboard setup. That just gives me the sim, the system. So are pointed straight up at the number 30, so 30 inches of manifold pressure. If you move the position back to the flying position, and then we'll sort of turn the head to the right and down and zoom in a little bit so that you can see, you'll notice that the engine gauges look like they're lined up just a little bit differently. This is called parallax error, and to give you a better view of it here, you can see from the pilot's view position that needle looks like it's slightly to the right of 30 inches. That amount of inaccuracy is not acceptable when setting power on radial engines. You want that number to be on 30, that's where the needle needs to be. So by using head position 2, you can get there. Now, this is head position 3. This position is showing you the top of the pedestal. As I showed you earlier, it allows you to get a good view of the placards related to the fuel system, and it also allows you to get a good view of your engine and propeller controls so that you can manipulate things in fine detail by switching to this view and then clicking on any of those buttons that you might need to access in order to adjust RPMs and things like that. Now, we also gave you a position that's as if you were sitting in the pilot seat looking down and to your right. And we did that because this is the view that you would have sitting in the pilot seat looking down at the back side of the pedestal for the controls that are there. For example, your autopilot is turned on by this button and this lever, and then this button up here. So we gave you a view that'll let you grab those pretty simply and pretty easily. And we think you'll find that it's easier to use that pre-configured button than it is to try to slew the view around.
I just caught him on that. He said it's in the beginning it's not an autopilot, but he just called it an autopilot.
Nice, easy, and direct.
Hey, it's Fort St. John.
Notice right here, that's a hydraulic control, that's a hydraulic control.
That's where I
And
live.
this view just gives you
See
a
if we
really
can see my
great
house.
way to reach for things that are down here. For example, I hope you don't have a day bad enough to use this, but fuel dump levers, may you never need to use them, but hitting button number 4 will take you right to this view, so you've got quick and easy access to the controls that are back here that you might need. Sometimes it's better to have a straight on view, so we gave you button number 5, just is essentially the flight engineer's view of the back of the center pedestal. And from here you can operate your mixture controls, your carbine controls. You've also got your aileron trim wheel there. All of those controls are a little bit hard to manipulate looking down on them, but when we get to button number 5 there, that'll help you. Alright, next up we're going to go across the top of the overhead panel. And this is button number 7, and it's up and to your left. If you set your views up on a pad like I did, that'll help you out. But these are your test buttons for the fire control system. Fire warning system, I'm sorry. And those are all up in the upper left eyebrow panel. Here's the controls and indications for all your anti-ice, that sort of thing. So if you need any of that, you just hit button 7, and there you are, you're looking right at it. Button number 8 is the center of the eyebrow panel.
Oh no, this is 14 John gas compressor, I'm pretty sure.
Right of the eyebrow panel.
Yeah,
Button
this
number
is totally
6
the gas
gives you the
compressor.
entire overhead panel, and then you can zoom in or out to manipulate controls as you need. Back to button 1, the pilot's position. Button number 2. Button number 3, 4, 5, 7, 8, 9, 6. And one last one here. That's button 0. And that takes you down here so you can use the tablet if you need it. But by configuring those that way and setting them up in a manner that makes logical sense to you on your keyboard, you can move around the cockpit pretty quickly and easily, as you've seen just there. Okay, now we're going to do something fun. This is a little something I stumbled into in the view control system for Microsoft Flight Simulator that allows you to glance around the cockpit quickly. For this test, let's just assume for a moment that, let's put the ship on ground power, it'll be easier. So, push to test, that works, battery power's on, ground power connector's closed, the ship is now on ground power. So, let's say for a moment, we want to test the fire control and indicator systems. which are all
Well sight, 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 like, there's just well sights everywhere.
And then we glance back down.
One big old compressor to push it
miss
all.
the function test because it happens fairly quickly. So we want to be able to glance back to where we were and glance up to where the buttons are. And the way we do this is by go to the main view, pivot your head so that you get the view that you think you need to be able to see them. So, for example, this. Now, hit the button that takes you to this view. Hit it again. Hit it again. Hit it again. And you'll notice that by hitting the same button repeatedly, it just causes your view to bounce back and forth between the window that you've selected. This is view 7. When you hit view 7 again, it goes and looks back at what you were looking at in the previous view. So I recommend trying it. You'll find it comes in really handy, especially when you're running a system test like the fire detection and suppression systems. Now, just a quick demonstration of the translation system. I'll let you move the head forward, back, left, right, up, down, which is fun because you can put together some really nice cinematic sequences. Use the buttons 0 through 9, as we've been discussing, to go to the pre-formatted views. But you can use the translate controls to, do this. I mean, it's art. So, you gotta spend time looking out the window. I've been flying Radial engine airliners for a decade. I still spend a lot of time looking out the window. Anyway, alright, let's turn the power off. I'm hungry. Anybody else hungry? Let's go for lunch. Alright, everybody. Thank you for flying with PMDG. Be well. Get back to see us soon. Look after one another. We'll see you next time. Welcome back, everybody. It's Rob from PMDG coming to you from PMDG HQ here in sunny Northern Virginia. We've got the DC-6 parked here at Washington National Airport, which seems an appropriate enough place to start since it's just a mile up the river from our office. So today we're going to go through the tablet on the flight deck. The tablet is here as a user aid to simplify some tasks for you. I'm going to walk you through the ground equipment page and how you use that, the fuel and loading page, the engine and health metrics page, and of course the user settings page.
we're going to spend some time discussing the artificial flight engineer. The flight engineer is going to become one of your best friends as you get used to flying the DC-6. He'll greatly simplify the process of learning the airplane and accomplishing complex tasks. Becomes very, very easy when you realize that you can just delegate things to him, just like you would in real life, in order to allow you to concentrate on flying the airplane. So we'll cover that process, and we'll do a short demo of his capabilities as well. We've got a lot of fun stuff to cover, so let's get started. Alright, so welcome to the flight deck of the PMDG DC-6 for Microsoft Flight Simulator. Take a look around just here for a moment. Take it all in. Lots and lots of round dials, knobs, and switches and buttons. What you're going to find is it's really not as complicated as it looks. So we've done a few things here to make your life easier.
Well, hello everyone, it's Rob from PMDG. Welcome aboard. You might be forgiven for wondering why it is that we are sitting here in the darkened cockpit of our Douglas DC-6. Well, that's an answer I'm about to shed some light on, because this episode is about cockpit lighting. There's a lot of dimmers on this airplane, so let's get started. One of the things that I really, really like about Microsoft Flight Simulator is the lighting model. If you've been a PMDG customer for years, you know that the lighting models we've worked with in other simulators have largely been hacks. And that makes it tough to really create a beautiful model and a beautiful environment. But what Asobo has done with this platform is simply extraordinary. Finally, we have a modern lighting capability. So one of the easiest ways to demonstrate that is this right here. Just turn on the flashlight and start pointing it around the flight deck. You can see the way the light plays off the ring around the compass. It's very convincing. It really is nice. And I think you're going to like that when you get a chance to jump into the flight deck of the DC-6. So, speaking of that, let's go ahead and turn the tablet on. Now, this airplane has a lot of dimmers. I've said this over and over again. To demonstrate that, let's put the ship on ground power by closing both of the contactors. And now we're on power. Alright, so let's hop into the cabin seat here, take a look at the tablet. When you look at the tablet, we know this ship has a lot of dimmers, and I mentioned it before, but sometimes that can be a little bit frustrating, especially if you're still trying to learn the airplane. So we gave you some quick configurations that you can use.
Okay, cool.
Start off by using flood here. Now this turns on all the bright lighting. Really lights it up as bright as day. This is the setting you'd use sitting on a ramp doing pre-flight, and it really shows off what Asobo has done. If you look, this light is actually an emitter, and the light is playing off the back structure of the flight deck and bouncing around to illuminate the whole thing. It really gives it a convincing look. If we switch to the red lighting, this gives you nice soft red ambient glow. There's these squares back here. Those are also light emitters pushing light across the overhead panel of the airplane. It reminds me a lot of the DC-3 that we fly. There's really no panel backlighting like you see in a modern airplane. It's light that's washed over the surface of the panels to create illumination. The white lighting button here changes the panel lighting primarily to switch from red to white lighting. Some pilots prefer to have white lighting, some pilots prefer to have red. Personally, my preference has always been for as dark a flight deck as you can possibly get. I don't really trust pilots that like to fly with the cockpit lights turned on. Usually those guys are afraid of the dark. So anyway, we'll turn this off. I'm going to turn the tablet off because we get that out of the way. I don't want filling the cockpit full of light.
Usually those guys are
Now
afraid of the
give you a quick
dark.
tour through some of the dimmers on the airplane. And of course we'll have
That's pretty funny.
the flashlight on so we can see. But if we, referencing the view configuration that we talked about earlier, this is view number 7, the upper left eyebrow.
Excuse me.
This dimmer right here is the cockpit floodlighting. You see I'm just moving it a little bit at a time, and we get a nice smooth gradient increase in the lighting. And the lighting just looks very convincing inside the flight deck. So I'm going to turn this down again a little bit. go. Alright, this dimmer right here that I'm circling is the backlighting for the radios. The three radios on the airplane are right here. They're attached to the bottom of the eyebrow panel, but they're not powered up right now because we're on a ground power unit, so we don't really need them. But looking at the overhead panel, again with the flashlight, you'll see we've got a gaggle of dimmers here. They're scattered all over. So this here is the flight engineer's reading light. We've got the main instrument panel lights. Then a little bit lower here we have the magnetic compass backlighting. We've got the upper switch and instrument panel lights. And then tucked down here in the corner, this is where your engine instrument lighting is. And we'll go ahead and start with this one. Turn that up. Just sort of pan the shot down a little bit here. And,
Okay.
turn the flashlight off. Then you can see that we've just added some red lighting to the engine instrument panel. And turn some red lighting up. This is the emitters that are behind your head, sort of projecting light across the roof of the airplane to illuminate the overhead panel. And that second dimmer I just did, that's the white lighting on the main panel here. Now we'll go back, turn these down, turn that down, turn this one back up. All right, so I've just turned the red lights back up on the main panel. And on the left and right extremes of the panel, both the captain and the co-pilot each has a dimmer, and that dimmer adds red lighting to the panel. I'll need my flashlight to find this one. There we are. And rotate that one. And as you can see, that gives each pilot independent authority over the red lighting on his panel. And then each pilot also has a reading map light dimmer there. It's actually really cool because you can see there's aluminum on the yokes here, and you can just see how the light plays off of that as you turn it up and down. So it shows a really sophisticated lighting model with reflective surfaces and things of that nature. So one of the other cool things that we've done is we've added the push-to-test functions to a lot of the indicator lamps. These are Corey lamps, really early designs, but they're pretty common in the early Douglas and Boeing fleets. But you can see it's got an iris in it, and as I rotate it, I can cause them to dim, which is a realistic function. We wind up having to do that on the DC-3 when we go in and out of day and night transition periods. But you can see I can just rotate it here a little bit, and it'll cause the light to dim so that it's not quite so glaring. And the neat thing about the lighting model in the Asobo simulator, or Asobo's work in Microsoft Flight Simulator, is that we can work with dimming logic like that in order to provide a much more realistic cockpit ambiance. So you're going to have to spend some time playing with the dimmers as you fly along in this airplane. It's kind of neat. So now let's take a look at the exterior lighting on the airplane. And I'm going to go ahead and just turn on a bunch of the exterior lights so you can take a look at it. Now, this airplane was certified in 1946, and the lighting requirements and the lighting capabilities back then weren't quite as robust as what we have now. Airplanes now are lit up like cruise ships, but you've got some very, very dim lighting in the landing gear bays. We've got that on the DC-3, and they're just about useless. But the airplane's got its sort of the standard strobe and beacon flashes. Now, this is a pretty cool thing. This wing light, I think, really shows off the true brilliance of Asobo's lighting model. So let me pull my magnifying lamp out here so you can see it. If you look at the way the light plays across the surface of that wing, you can see that it has a different texture and character to it as it plays across the painted surfaces and the unpainted surfaces. And you can see the folds and shape of the wing metal and the rivet lines, and that shows you just how robust and how complete the lighting model is in Microsoft Flight Simulator. And it's just something that as developers we've never had this before, and it's pretty exciting to finally have tools like this because it really helps our stuff to look good. So we'll we'll be good citizens here. We'll go ahead and power the ship down as we prepare to end the lesson here. It's always important to make sure that the ship is depowered. Go ahead and turn the flashlight off. But anyway, that's your tour of the lighting system on the Douglas DC-6. Hope you enjoyed it. Thank you for flying with PMDG. Be well. Look after one another. We'll see you real soon. Well, hello everybody and welcome aboard. It's Rob from PMDG back with another episode of the PMDG DC-6 for Microsoft Flight Simulator tutorial series. We're going to get dangerously close to starting engines this time. We're going to go through the before start process with the automated flight engineer. He's up there waiting for us, so don't just stand there. Let's get started. Alright, welcome. Now the fun stuff really starts to begin. Don't be afraid, come on in. I'm not even going to close the door behind you. We're not going anywhere. Let's start out with a quick flight deck review just to make sure that we're all up to speed on what's where and how. Here's your mixture levers, your carburetor heat. This is your control lock here, your gyro pilot, throttles. Your fuel controllers are up there. These are your propeller controllers right here. Moving up to the main panel, pilot's flight instruments, all your engine instrumentation, your fire warning and control system is right there, co-pilot's flight instruments. Now we'll take a look at the overhead panel, moving up. Starting over here, we've got your fire warning system test buttons. Here we have all the anti-ice controls. This is all your fluid quantities, oils, fuel, things like that. Pressurization and air conditioning, electrical panel. Up here you got all your engine controls for starting and stopping the engines, some electrical controls, fuel pumps, light switches, dimmers. Those are scattered everywhere as we've talked about. Alright, now that we've done a little bit of refreshing the memory of where things are, let's go ahead and climb into the pilot seat here and get the process started. So, we're going to pull up the tablet. Now, pay close attention to this piece right here, because this is going to be the format that we use for all the tutorials going forward, unless I state otherwise. As you can see, the default loadout for the airplane is this, and the gross weight is just shy of 78,000 pounds. Now, we're going to do the tutorials weighing a little bit more than that. So let's go ahead and increase the passenger load to 34 and the cargo load to 2,400 pounds. It'll take us up to 86,412 pounds. That's a good gross weight. It's sort of a reasonable operational weight for a relatively lightly loaded DC-6, but that's what we're going to use from here on out. So that's the configuration we're going to go to when you hear me talking about that in other tutorials. I'm going to refer to that as our standard configuration, so just keep that in mind. Alright, now, for the next couple of minutes here, I'm just going to go through each view that we have pre-configured, so 1 through 9 and then back to 0, while I give you a quick briefing on some things. Alright, this airplane was certified back in the mid-1940s, and it really saw the heyday of its service, kind of the late 40s through the late 50s. Back in those days, before the captain came out to the airplane, there was a whole team of people who would get the airplane ready for flight. They would go through all the maintenance logs, tidy up the maintenance items, top up the fluids, make sure the airplane was properly fueled. They would run the airplane, taxi it out to the run-up block, power it up, run through all of the system checks, bring it back to the stand and park the airplane where it would then be assumed under responsibility of the captain, who would sign the log, take possession of the airplane. He would then alight the stairs like the deity that he should be and assume responsibility for flying the airplane. That meant that a lot of the system checks that really go into the detail of the things that we've modeled in this PMDG Douglas DC-6 don't necessarily fall under the purview of flying the airplane. They're system checks. And while we have built a simulation that is deep and rich enough that you can go through and do all of those, and we will in the advanced tutorial series, you don't have to do them in order to be able to fly and enjoy this airplane. We created the automated flight engineer under the presumption that he does all that for you before you come out to the airport to fly the airplane. So instead, when we want to get into flying the airplane, we can bring up the flight engineer page here and choose from the list of items on this list of automated flight engineer tasks what we want done. In this case, we're getting ready to start the airplane. We want to have the automated flight engineer run the before start checklist. This assumes everything else has been done. All we're doing right now is just checking that the airplane is ready to start. That's where we are. So let's hit the button.
Cockpit briefing.
What you're hearing now is the automated flight engineer doing everything from powering the ship up to setting all the switch positions to ensure the bird's ready to start. You'll hear a challenge response checklist when he's finished.
Completed. Voice recorder. Tested. Oil coolers and cow flaps. Water in position. Fuel and fluids. Checked. Pressurization. Set. Manifold and duct pressure. Checked. Radios. Checked. Doors and hatches.
Yeah. I know I said we weren't going to close the door, but let this be your first lesson. Never trust the check airman.
Closed. Door warning lights. Out. Gear pins. Removed. 3 on board. Seat belts and pedals. Adjusted. Throttles. Set to idle. Propellers. Forward and 3. Before start checks complete. Start engines.
Alright, with that call, we are now officially ready to start engines. Everything's pre-configured. The only thing we gotta do is use the start switches right here. We'll go into that in the next episode. But the important piece I want you to take away here, there's 22 pages of pre-flight checklist in the manual. You don't have to do all of those. Your automatic flight engineer will do them for you. And that's a great thing. It really gives you the opportunity to decide just how in-depth you want your flight experience to be with the PMDG DC-6. So, up next, we're going to get them started. Maybe. Till next time, be well, look after one another. Thanks for flying PMDG. Till next time, be well, look after one another. Thanks for flying PMDG. You know what our ramper's thinking right about now? She's thinking the same thing that everybody else in eyeshot of this vintage DC-6 is thinking. Our ramper's thinking right about now. I bet they're not going to be able to get it started. And you know what the most embarrassing thing in the world is? Not being able to
getting
get
it started. That's
But
pretty
don't you
funny.
worry. I'm here to help. Welcome aboard, everybody. It's Rob from PMDG, and this time at Meta. Let's get started. Alright, well, welcome back to the flight deck of the PMDG DC-6. This tutorial is going to be about engine starts. Now, a couple things I want to make clear. There's really going to be 2 tutorials about engine starts. There's going to be this one, which is just going to cover the basics of how do you get the engine started. But I'm also going to do an advanced tutorial that really covers the inside nitty-gritty, in-deep, get oil on your hands kind of aspects of how to start and keep a radial engine running once you've got it started. Now, I've been flying radial engine airplanes for just about 20 years now. I've got a significant amount of experience flying the DC-3 and operating those engines. Some of the tips and tricks that I'm going to teach you in this tutorial and in the advanced tutorial come from that experience, and they're adapted in order to make your simulator experience a little bit more enjoyable. There's nothing more frustrating than getting into RDC6, for example, and just simply not being able to get the engine started because you don't really understand the goal. So I'm going to walk you through that. In this tutorial, we're going to stick right down the middle of this is what you do to get the engine started and keep them running. At the end of the tutorial, I'm going to give you a couple of tricks that if the engines won't start, look here, look here, look here, this is what you're looking for. My hope is it'll make engine starts less of a mystery and give you some more success. So there's three things you need to start a radial engine. You need air, which will take care of itself. You need fuel, which you're going to have to introduce, and you need a spark, which will come from the ignition system. I'm going to show you how to manipulate the switches in order to bring all three of those things together in order to get your engine started. I'm going to take you through three views you're going to use during the engine start. Obviously, you've got the view of your overhead panel. This is button 6 in our view definition. Next, we're going to hit button 2. This is your engine instruments. Button 5 is your flight engineer's view that shows you the back of the pedestal. Now these are your mixture levers. These control whether or not your engines can get fuel. Up here, important stuff you want to be looking at is fuel pressure and oil pressure. Also, once you get your engine running, you're going to want to be looking at RPM. On the overhead panel, switches you're going to be using, these are your fuel pumps up here. These are your starter switches. You've got your engine start selector, and you've got your ignition switches. That pretty much covers everything you're going to need to get an engine started. Now, these ignition switches, I may refer to them as magnetos because that's what we call them in the warbird community. Those switches are determining whether or not there's electricity going to the spark plugs in the cylinder in the engine. A whole complicated topic related to that we'll go into in the advanced tutorial. For now, what you want to do is rotate those to the both position when you're trying to start an engine. By doing that, you'll be sending electricity to both spark plugs in every cylinder on that engine, and that's really what you want. Alright, right here we've got our start switches. There's a safety switch and a start switch. They move together. Once you close these two switches, the engine will start to rotate, and your flight engineer will begin calling out blades. He'll count through 12. The reason he's doing that is not to disperse lubricant inside the engine, as many people believe. It's a process that's used to check and ensure that the engine does not have hydraulic lock with oil or fuel trapped inside of a cylinder. This switch right here is your booster switch. This is an ignition booster, and it will confuse some people because
Fire
up here,
sparks
fuel
into the
pumps,
cylinder.
fuel booster pump. So people see booster on the
It's an
pump and they see
ignition
booster on the
booster.
switch, and they think, well, they must be related. Well, they're not. The booster switch is actually related to an ignition coil that dramatically increases the number of or the amount of ignition sparking going on from the spark plugs. It's sort of colloquially referred to as a shower of sparks. The hope is that by using the booster coil to increase the amount of ignition, that spark floating through the cylinder that's all full of fuel vapor is going to be a happy fuel vapor. There'll be some chemistry, boom, and that engine's going to light off. So that's what that booster is doing. On the other side of this group of switches, we have a prime switch. Now, you'll have a boost pump on, and that boost pump is going to provide fuel under pressure from the tank to the engine. When you press this prime switch, it's going to open a valve which will then allow that fuel to go down through the carburetor, through the intake valves, into the cylinder where, if we're lucky, it meets our happy little spark and the aforementioned boom and everybody lives happily ever after. That prime switch is how you're going to introduce fuel to the engine during the start to make sure that it gets up and running. And you'll do that in a very specific order with these 4 switches that we're looking at right here. But there's another very important component to providing fuel to the engine so that it can run. And that component comes through the fuel mixture levers, which are down on the back side of the throttle pedestal down here.
these 4 levers with an M on them are your mixture levers. And these are, if you've flown general aviation airplanes, you're already familiar with them. They're very similar, except that we have a very sophisticated, automated, mechanically driven fuel computer that meters the fuel to the engine. But you see it's got an idle cutoff position. When the levers are in this position, the engine's not getting any fuel. Pretty self-explanatory. On a lean position, this is the position that this lever will be in at low power settings like taxiing on the ground or during cruise flight. Then the auto rich position, which is up above it, that's the position you'll want the lever in when you're operating at high power, such as during takeoff or a climb or even a go-around, something like that. To move the switches is pretty straightforward. I recommend you just hover your mouse over it. Use the center scroll button. Scroll forward 1, it'll move up. Scroll forward back, it'll move down. Really not hard to remember to do, and it sort of matches the kinesthetic feel of what you're doing with that lever. Alright, so let's roll right into a start here. Now, let's have our automatic flight engineer do the before start check. That way we know everything's all set up properly. If there's one thing that I could impart to you that will make things easier for you as you fly the DC-6, use the automatic flight engineer. We spent a lot of time creating his logic in order to automate a bunch of tasks that might require you to really dig into the manuals, get deep down into the dirt, and learn the whole airplane. And we've simulated all of that. This is an incredibly complex simulation of a vintage airliner. But we didn't want to put you in a position where you had to learn all this stuff. So use the flight engineer to simplify your life, to unload some tasks, ensure you succeed with things, and then start taking pieces of that operation away from it one at a time. You could do the whole pre-flight setup and go through the engine start, or you could do the after start checklists and things of that nature. That would be my recommendation for how to kind of work your way into flying the DC-6. I often like to say with the crews that I fly, you don't have to eat the whole cookie at once. Sometimes it's good to just sort of nibble around the edges. So let's see them wrap up this checklist, and then we'll go ahead and get started.
Before start checks complete.
Alright, with that, we're ready to start. Are you nervous? Don't be. I'm the only one that's going to laugh at you. Alright, so you'll notice that the flight engineer pushed the mixture up for us. He also set the number 3 engine igniter to on and set the engine selector to the number 3 position. All that's left for us to do, turn the boost pump on, click the starters, click the booster coil, click the primer after he counts for 12 blades. So, let's go ahead and turn the boost pump on. Now, this is an important verification step. Slide down here to view number 2, look at the number 3 engine fuel pressure. You see you've got fuel pressure there. So, at the starter, he's going to count 12 blades.
6, 5.
Then we're going to hit the booster coil. Now we're going to hit the primer. And there we go. Congratulations. You've started your first radial engine, but important. Jump down here to the number 2 view, looking at the instruments, and make sure you get oil pressure. If you don't get oil pressure within 30 seconds, that engine's going to eat itself, so shut it down. Now over here, you'll notice that the RPM is fairly high. Just wiggle the throttle a little bit, pull it back to idle, so that engine settles in below 1,000 RPM. That's where it should normally go after a start. You want to do that because you really don't want to run a radial engine above 1,000 RPM until the engine oil's had a chance to heat to at least 40 degrees Celsius. That is, generally speaking, a very good way to ensure that you get unnecessary wear on the bearings, and that'll come back to bite you later. And engines never fail in cruise, they always fail on takeoff for some reason. So, anyway. Alright, so you can see our ramper is, she doesn't appear impressed. She's definitely not impressed. Alright. She knows we got 3 more chances to mess this up. So, let's go ahead and get started. Next engine to start is going to be number 4. So bring the number 4 mixture lever up. Now we bounce back up here to the overhead panel. We set the igniter to on, or excuse me, to both. Move the engine selector to number 4, turn the number 4 boost pump on to low is fine. I accidentally set it to high there, but I just moved it back to low. You can see we've got fuel pressure in the number 4 engine right over here. That's what you want. Back to the overhead panel. Hit those starters. Let the AFE count out blades.
6, 9,
It's 12. Hit the boost. Hit the primer. Boom. Engine lights off. You've now got 2 engines running. Okay. Immediately use view number 2. Right down to the engine instruments. Look at your oil pressure. Look at your fuel pressure. Check your RPM for number 4. Make sure it's down below 1,000 RPM. So that's all good. You got a nice, clean, healthy start out of it. One of the things I'm really looking forward to is when Asobo gives us the ability to add smoke emitters to our DC6. That's really going to make these engine starts even more fun. All right, let's start engine number 2.
Yeah, that'll be cool.
Number 2 ignition to both.
Ugh.
Set the
Very back,
engine
guys.
selector.
I'm not going
to
far.
2. We're going to turn the number 2 boost pump to low. Start.
Oh.
3,
AFE counts out 12 blades.
6, 9, 12,
Boost, primer, voila, engine lights off. We jump down to the main panel view. We're checking for fuel pressure, oil pressure, RPM. And you'll notice the whole panel's got a nice pleasant little shake to it. That's actually a very realistic representation of the vibration that these engines will put into the airframe when they're low power. One more engine to start, so bring the number 1 engine mixture up, turn number 1 igniters on, set the engine selector to 1, boost pump to low pressure, hit the starter, engine's turning over. When you get good at this, on this one you lean over and look out the window and you can see it turning. It's pretty cool. 12 blades and boost, primer. Okay. Jump down here, check your oil pressure, check your fuel pressure, check your RPM. You now have 4 good engines lit off. Now just take a glance across. You'll notice that your gauges here all pretty much line up. Over here you get your fuel flow, those match. And you'll notice on your oil pressure gauges, the engine you started first has the lowest oil pressure. And if you think about it, it makes sense because that engine's been heating up its oil a lot longer than the other 3. You'll notice that a warm engine has lower oil pressure than a cold engine, and that's reflected in these gauges here. You can see the oil temperature of the first engine we started is higher than the last engine. And you'll notice also that as the oil warms, the cylinder head temperatures here are going to climb, and the RPM will kind of creep forward. So if you're in a cold climate when you start these engines, you're going to bring the RPMs back, and they're going to tend to creep forward. You're going to be constantly pulling the throttles back to keep the engines from going over 1,000 RPM while the engine warms. That's a realistic representation of what it's like. Now, it's always important to do the after start checklist.
off and off. Battery switch. Flame venting.
See that they're going through and
Generator
doing some switch cleanup and making sure things are all set.
Emergency lights. Armed. Ground power. Removed. After start checks complete.
Okay. Alright, I think I detect a tiny little bit of a smile on your face, and that's good. Starting at DC6 is really not terribly difficult once you kind of have the switchology down. Know which buttons to hit and which switches to throw in the right order. And of course, relying upon the automated flight engineer to then do the setup and then also do the cleanup afterwards really does simplify your life. Now, let's check on our ramp agent here and see if she's thoroughly impressed with the fact that we did manage to get it started. Yeah, I'm not seeing it. Okay, anyway. Something that you will want to spend a little bit of time watching is your engine instrumentation while your engines are warming up. Oil temperature is very important to radial engines, and when you first get them started, if it's cold out, give them an opportunity to warm up before you start applying power to them. Otherwise, they're going to wear prematurely, and you really don't want that because that gets expensive. Okay, so I've reset us. We're now in a ship that is on ground power, but is completely shut down. And what we're going to do is we're going to use engine number 2 to demonstrate a couple of different failure modes you might run into. Alright, ship's all ready to start. Just reach up here, crank the starter. Nothing happens. You can tell because our rampaging continues to be unimpressed. The first thing you should suspect if that happens is your engine selector right here. Chances are you probably left it in the off position, and that's why your engine won't rotate. The other gotcha is if you've just started, say, engine number 3, and now you want to start engine number 4, but you forgot to move the selector and you can't figure out why engine 4 is not turning, that's probably why. Alright, so let's continue on. We've now set it to engine number 2, and we're preparing to start engine number 2. So we hit the starter, you can hear the engines turn.
6.
We wait till our flight engineer counts our 12 blades. We had boost, we had prime, and ignition. Nothing. It just continues to rotate. Okay. If you've got an engine that rotates and you know your ignition's working, chances are you forgot the fuel. So you glance down here, you see, oh, look at that, no fuel pressure. Okay. So we've got to fix the fuel pressure problem going to the engine. Yeah, all right. Let's bring the mixture lever up and turn the boost pump on. And if we glance down here, yep, look at that. We have fuel pressure. All right, so see? It's easy to solve these problems if you just think about the fact that you just need those 3 things. Because if you've got air, you've got fuel, and you've got spark, you're going to have an engine light off. As we're going to see right here. Look at that. So troubleshooting them is not terribly difficult. You just got to kind of stop, think it through, suspect that engine selector, suspect your ignition. And if you've got those taken care of, then look at your fuel. If you got that taken care of, well, then you're probably going to be calling maintenance. But, let's see here. So, let's light off another. We'll do number 1 this time. Fuel in. Yeah, we'll crank that starter. You can see that our engine selector is on number 1. Flight engineer gets to 12 blades. All we've got to do boost, prime. It's not lighting on. Why do you think that is? We've got air. We know we've got fuel. But let's maybe just go take a look anyway. Yep, we do have fuel pressure. So, we know we've got air. We know we've got fuel. Oh, spark. See? Our igniter's still off. That means we're not getting spark to the engine to light it off. So we're going to have to add that in order to get this engine to start. That's how the troubleshooting process should work for you. Just think it through. Now, you'll notice in the tablet that we have both a realistic engine start and a simplified engine start. If you're having trouble starting the engines, just turn off
This
the
is what I
realistic
wanted
engine
to
start
know.
until you get the hang of it. That will widen out the parameters by which the engine will start, and that'll make your life a little bit easier. And then turn it back on once you get good at it. Alright, well, I think we're pretty much ready to start looking at taxiing and flying. So, till next time, fly safely, be good to one another. Thank you for flying PMDG. We'll see you again real soon. Welcome aboard, everybody. It's Rob from PMDG, back with another tutorial for our Douglas DC-6 for Microsoft Flight Simulator. We've successfully gotten through the engine start process. Today we're going to move on to taxiing. Of course, that'd be easier if the FBO didn't leave us parked facing the fence line. Well, no worries. We got a solution for that too. So, let's get started.
Welcome back to the flight deck of the DC-6. By now, you should probably be getting used to the fact that we've included some automated processes in the form of the automated flight engineer and also some pre-formatted starting points that you can use from inside the tablet in order to allow you to jump to whatever phase of flight it is that you're most interested in. But the tablet also allows you to skip over things that might seem kind of onerous. What we're trying to show is that we have included a number of automated tools that will allow you to choose how much depth you really want to go into with the DC-6. If you are like me and you really like to dig into checklists and learning systems, this simulation is more than deep enough to allow you to really become familiar with what it's like to operate the airplane realistically. If, however, that's a little bit over your head or you just want to be able to fly the airplane for fun, you've got tools that allow you to do that as well, and you can use the automated flight engineer to skip you through the checklists and handle all the switches and knobs.
Alright,
In addition, we've got some
I'll pause this. Where are we landing? Let's go 04 over the lake.
Charlie Yankee Papa Echo Traffic Gearhead Gaming 420 tree 8 miles northwest 7,000 feet inbound to land runway 0.
River. I'll try something here. See if it makes the trees look any better. Oh, it is already on. Never mind. Look, crop circles. Pretty sure it's hay bales, but alright, the lake should be just ahead of us here. take this. So there's the lake. That's what we'll do. It's kind of strange how perfectly this thing's trimmed out right now.
Charlie Yankee Papa Echo traffic gearhead gaming 42014 miles west, 6,800 feet inbound to land runway 0. Charlie Yankee Papa Echo traffic gearhead gaming 420 is on crosswind runway 0.
I guess. I guess that would have been base leg. I think. Is Grimshaw.
Charlie Yankee Papa Echo traffic gearhead gaming 420 is on final runway 04 to land.
Can't remember what button it is to, oh, there we go. Oh, never mind, I see it there. We're still a ways off yet. That's pretty cool looking. With the fog in the valley. Lol. Gotta love that Islander life. Alright, we're down. Oh, there's no clear runway. Oh.
Charlie Yankee Papa Echo Traffic Gearhead Gaming 420 is clear of the runway.
I don't know what the hell all this is. The line going across there. Another one there. Weird. Oh, is that snow buildup? What the hell? Weird. Oh, wrong pedal. Oops. Heartbreak on. We'll deliver. That's weird. Okay. Okay, well, let's shut this thing down. Come on. What is with all the shimmering? Do I need to restart? No, that didn't seem to help. Weird. Very weird. Let me relaunch the game quick, see if it fixes that shader flicker. There we go. Okay, be right back. Okay. What do we got next? Let's make it interesting. What? Uh, Zoom in, damn it. Whatever, that works. Trying to find a parking stall that's out of the way. Yeah, that one should work. There's no building there or anything. Alright. Hopefully it doesn't like spawn us inside a building. Excuse me. Alright, give the old girl a few spins to load everything in. Oof, the frame rate with this thing. Oh, that might be because I turned VSync to 32 though. Let's swap it back to 60, see what happens. Nope, it's the plane. Just a really heavy cockpit, I guess. Sweet plane though. Oh, what? Pan Am? I thought I picked the Alaska Airlines. Oh well. Here's another bot to ban. Get him. Get him. Get him. If there's anyone in here, you should report that bot. That'd be lovely. If there's anyone in here, excuse me. That'd be lovely. Excuse me. Okay. Remove that and report you. Alright. Here we go. So, let's do this. Just to make it nice and quick. Oh, shit. Wait, what? There we go. No. I can't remember how to fold it out. Ah, there we go. That's pretty cool. GPU is on. We'll throw the wheel chocks in. Oh, I see. They're actual little pans that hook on under the engine to catch the dripping oil. That's cool as hell. This thing looks awesome. Okay, like, it'd be nice if that would piss off so I could actually see what the fuck was going on. Alright, let's see if we can get the old girl started. Hold on. Sorry folks, business calls. Alright, before we start. Got a load of boots and shoes.
Checked. Pressurization. Set. Manifold and duct pressure. Checked. Radios. Checked. Doors and hatches. Closed. Door warning lights. Out. Gear pins. Removed. 3 on board. Seat belts and pedals. Adjusted. Throttles. Set to idle. Propellers. Forward and 3. Before start checks complete. Start engines.
This actually doesn't run too bad. I mean, it's definitely not great. Alright, so engine 3, pumps on. Now, where's that dilute button? Because I'm definitely going to need that. Where the hell are all the views they apparently had set up?
Charlie Yankee Papa Echo Traffic Gearhead Gaming 420 is clear of the runway.
What?
Charlie Yankee Papa Echo Traffic Gearhead Gaming 420 taking off runway 22 right touch and go.
That's not even... Now I'm just confused. Let's see if I can cycle through. No. Well, that's weird. Where is that dilute? So I definitely need it. Ah, there we go. I forgot you gotta hold control. So 5, 6 is the overhead. Oh shit, everything's dying on me at once. Phone's dying, headset's dying, vape's dying. Ugh. Headset doesn't take long to charge though. Alright, so I'm hoping, really hoping, that we still have, oh yeah, we're on ground power. Okay, we're good. I'm actually gonna want the boost pump on high, because we're in cold weather. I really wish I knew where the hell that dilute was. I know I've seen it. On the video, I just don't, I swear it was on this overhead. Where is the dilute button? Oh, it's probably up here. Oil dilution. 3. Let's see if she fires. Actually. Oh, come on. On auto lean. Parking brake is set. Oh shit. Oh, that's cool. That works too. Then you go control 6 to the overhead. Let's try it.
3, 6, 9, 12.
Okay, we've got oil pressure. Let's give her all the air. That little tiny battery. I gotta get used to where the gauges are. I keep hunting for them. Yeah, see, we're getting high on the RPM there for sure. Alright, next engine. We're on 4. Magneto to both.
3, 6,
Let them count out as 12.
9, 12,
Boost prime. Oh, no, I'm an idiot. Well, we got the engine lubricated anyways. Need fuel, man, need fuel. Try that again. Let them count out as 12.
6, 9, 12,
Boost prime. Still nothing. We're missing something. What are we missing? Magneto's on. Engine selector is good. Let's try high fuel boost. Let's try 70% air. High boost. Magneto's good. Engine 4 selected. Boost pump to high.
Three, 6, 9, 12.
There she goes. Just give me the damn fucking switch. Go engine 2. Dilute is on. Magneto on. Actually, while I'm here, I don't remember where the lighting control is. Okay, that's your carb air temperature. Gotcha. Trying to bring that idle back a little bit. This is gonna be an icy trip. Alright, 2 should be diluted enough.
3, 6, 9, 12.
I didn't turn the fuel on, shit. I'm bad for that. Where is it? There it is.
Three, 6, 9, 12.
No go. But RPM is creeping right up there. That's not what we want. Bring that shit back. Okay, the engines are holding. Number 2, why you no go? Let's try it again, I guess.
3, 6, 9, 12.
There she goes. Might just be because it's cold. Okay, dilution can go off on 2. Bring it on for number 1. While we're over here, just crank that, see if it'll help with the windows. The engines are starting to level out a bit. Okay, number one should be diluted enough. Let's give it a shot. Prime the engine for a little bit first. Let them count it out.
6, 9, 12.
There she goes. She is running. We'll just close this. That doesn't make it any quieter. Oh, it does a little bit. Nice.
Start selecting boost pumps. Off and off. Battery switch. Plane battery. Generators and inverters. Checked and on. Emergency lights. Armed. Ground power. Removed. After start checks complete.
Gust lock is off.
Boost pumps. Boost pumps on low. Fuel selector and crossfeed. Start selecting boost pumps. Off and off. Battery switch. Plane battery. Generators and inverters. Checked and on. Emergency lights. Armed. Ground power. Removed. After start checks complete.
Oh, check that out. I really wish the windshield would thaw out. Ah, there we go. It's gonna make it hot as hell in here, so we'll see if the windows will thaw. T's and P's are... Carb air temps are looking good. Oil temps are still a little low, especially on one. Idling a little high here. Where are we here?
You know what our ramper's thinking right about now? This is an ignition.
Yeah, I've got it running.
This check heat itself, so shut it down. Now, right down to the engine instruments. Look at your oil pressure. Look at your fuel pressure.
All good.
Check your RPM for curve 4. Make sure it's down below 1,000 RPM. So that's all good. You got a nice, clean, healthy start out of it. One of the things I'm really looking forward to is when Sobo gives us the ability to add smoky layers to our DC6. That's really going to make these engine starts even more fun. Alright, start engine number 2. Frame a lot longer than the other 3. You'll notice that a warm engine has lower oil pressure than a cold engine. That's reflected in these gauges here. You can see the oil temperature of the first engine we started is higher than the last engine. You'll notice also that as the oil warms, the cylinder head temperatures here are going to climb, and the RPM will kind of creep forward. So if you're in a cold climate when you start these engines, you're going to bring the RPMs back, and they're going to tend to creep forward. You're going to be constantly pulling the throttles back to keep the engines from going over 1,000 RPM while the engine warms. That's a realistic representation of what it's like. Now, it's always important to do the after-start checklist.
There we
go.
go.
Going through and doing some switch cleanup and making sure things are all set.
Emergency lights. Off.
Okay. Alright, I think I detect a tiny little bit of a smile on your face, and that's good. Starting at DC6 is really not terribly difficult once you kind of have the switch ology down. Know which buttons to hit, which switches to throw in the right order. Of course, relying upon the automated flight engineer to then do the setup and then also do the cleanup afterwards really does simplify your life. Now, let's check on our ramp agent here, see if she's thoroughly impressed with the fact that we have switches to throw, making sure things are all set. That's a realistic representation of what it's like. Now, it's always important to do the after start checklist.
Off and on. Battery switch. Plane bed.
See that they're going through and
Generator
doing some switch cleanup and making sure things are all set.
Emergency lights. Armed. Ground power. Removed. After start checks complete.
Okay. Alright, I think I detect a tiny little bit of a smile on your face, and that's good. Starting at DC6 is really not terribly difficult once you kind of have the switch ology down. Know which buttons to hit, which switches to throw in the right order. Of course, relying upon the automated flight engineer to then do the setup and then also do the cleanup afterwards really does simplify your life. Now, let's check out
Oil temp is good.
see if she's thoroughly impressed with the fact that we did manage to get it started.
RPMs have equalized.
I'm not seeing it. Okay, anyway. Something that you will want to spend a little bit of time watching is your engine instrumentation while your engines are warming up. Oil temperature is very important to radial engines. And when you first get them started, if it's cold out, give them an opportunity to warm up before you start applying power.
Did that.
Otherwise, they're going to wear prematurely. You really don't want that because that gets expensive. Okay, so I've reset us. We're now in a ship that has on-ground power, but is completely shut down. And what we're going to do is we're going to use engine number 2 to demonstrate a couple of different failure modes you might run into. Alright, ship's all ready to start. Just reach up here, crank the starter. Nothing happens. You can tell because our ramp agent continues to be unimpressed. The first thing you should suspect if that happens is your engine is selected right here. Chances are you probably left it in the off position. See, oh look at that. No fuel pressure. We have fuel pressure. And if you've got those taken care of, we've got air. No, we've got fuel. But let's maybe just go take a look anyway. Yep.
Easy to use aircraft states. Here on the tablet you can see all we need to do is light off one by one here as we watch. And as the engines come online, you'll also notice that it assumes that they've already been running. They're warmed up, they're ready to go, there's really nothing that you need to do. And the checklists are complete as well. So when you push the ready to taxi button, once you see all 4 engines running, you really are ready to go. And that's what we're doing here right now. So all 4 engines are running. We're going to take a look here. We'll just scan through the engine instruments just to make sure. And as you can see, the oil temperatures and pressures and everything, they're all ready to go. So we can begin taxiing whenever we're ready. But you know what? Let's stick to the program. Let's have the automated flight engineer run the after start checklist. That way we know
that's for the reverse.
everything's ready to go.
Start selected boost pumps. Off and off. Battery switch.
We'll let them kind of go through their thing. I'm going to talk over them a little bit because you've seen them do the after start check before. But we're facing a fence line here, and
Emergency lights.
my experience with this airplane tells us that we could probably make this turn and be able to taxi out of the ramp without too much problem.
Start checks complete.
But maybe we might be sticking a wing over that fence line, and generally speaking, it's better for your career if you don't run a wingtip over a fence line or anything else. If you don't run your wing over the top of an object, you can't hit anything with it. And I think we can all agree that hitting something with your wing is usually not career enhancing. So what we're going to do is we're going to use reverse propellers. These are your propeller controls right here. We're going to use reverse to back the airplane out of its parking stand. And we're going to do it by moving the throttles to idle and then dropping this bar. This is the reverse lever. We're going to drop that into reverse and then add a little bit of power. All right, so we've selected reverse, bringing the throttles up just a little bit, and you'll see that we're beginning to see an increase in engine RPM, which is right here, and the manifold pressure, which is directly above it. So we're going to start to back up just very, very gently. Now, the key to backing an airplane like the DC-6 up is don't do anything fast and don't do anything rash. You know, like forgetting to turn off the parking brake. That'll always keep you in one place. Okay, so the parking brake's released. Now you can see we're rolling. And we're just creeping back. We're not in a big rush. We can't see behind us. We don't have rear view mirrors. If we were doing this actually at National Airport, we'd have to go find the guys from Signature because they probably wouldn't be working with us anyway, but we'd have to go find someone to back us out of the stand so that we wouldn't hit anything. But a DC-6 is a very tail-centric airplane. If we get the airplane going in reverse and we tamp on the brakes real hard, the airplane will stand on its tail, so we're not going to do that. In fact, we're going to try not to use the brakes at all. So I've got right rudder into it, or right tiller, sorry, and so the airplane's just kind of starting to pivot out of its stand, and you can see it's kind of working its way around here. You can also see that there's quite a lot of vibration.
Oh no, I let the
transmitted
engine
into the airframe, and that's actually quite realistic. These engines don't